This is embarrassing, and I want to open with an apology. I have hosted novel marketing for 12 years, and somehow I've never done an episode about website book pages. You know, the most important page on your website for selling books and getting AIs to recommend books to readers. Yeah, that page. Sure, I have episodes on the homepage, about page, press kit page, landing page, even the contact page has an episode. But I don't have anything on the book page. If you're new to the show, you may not know just what an oversight this is. You see, I got my start in publishing back in 2007, building websites for authors. My company, Author Media, even built the #1 author bookstore plugin for WordPress. And what did that plugin do back in the day? It built book pages. And yet I've never once talked about how you can create your own amazing book pages on your own website. And this topic is more important than ever. Your book page is not just about selling your book anymore. It's also about training ChatGPT to recommend your book to readers. So, how do you create a sales boosting book page? Find out in this episode of Novel Marketing, the longest running book marketing podcast in the world that somehow has never talked about website book pages. So let's start with the #1 most important tip, and that is that every book needs its own web page on your website. Now, new authors do this well. They write a book and then create a page all about that book. But then, when they write a second book, they often rename the page to Books and add info about the new book on top of the old book. This is a huge mistake, and it will kill your search engine rankings and AI optimization. If you don't have a page on your website all about the book, search engines will just send people to Amazon, which means you'll miss out on your chance to connect with your reader, grow your email list, sell direct, or make affiliate revenue. It's a huge missed opportunity. The good news is this huge mistake is easy to fix. Just copy and paste the info for each book into its own web page. Then create a books page that's nothing but big, beautiful covers, and have the covers link to each individual book page. If you've written a lot of books, you may want a page for each series, as well as a page for all of your books all together. The books page is also where you'll share your recommended reading order. So you want your books page, the page that lists all of your books, to answer these two questions. 1, which book should I read first? And 2, which book should I read next? Your books are not actually your children. You don't have to love them all the same. You can't hurt their feelings. And readers who come to your website really do want answers to those questions. And so you want to let readers know which book to read first, and if they've already read some of your books, which books to read next. Yes, your readers can read your books in whatever order they want, but they're coming to your website. They want to know your answer to this question. And I recommend that they start with your very best book first. You want to make a good first impression. Once they love your hits, they may come to love your deep tracks too. For new authors who are still improving in their craft, your best book is often your latest book, because you get better at writing with every book you write. So be prepared to update this page with each new release. Okay, enough about the books page. Now let's talk about the individual book pages. This is the page for a specific book. And I will say, I'll have a printable checklist that you can download that's a companion to this episode that's got a checklist for all the things I'm going to talk about. And you can download that free checklist at authormedia.com/466. So what do you put on a book page? Well, at the very top of the page, you want a big, beautiful cover, the highest resolution possible online, because some readers will be doing a image search for your book cover. So you want to have a higher resolution version than what they can find on Amazon or on any of the other store websites. This will also make it easier for journalists, video people, even people doing presentations. Anyone who wants to use your book cover as an illustration or as an example, you want to give them a very high resolution cover. You also want to include right at the top of the page your title and subtitle and your author name. I would also include somewhere on the page a author bio. This can be a short 2 to 3 sentence bio that then links to your full about page. And so you can have an about the author section somewhere on the page and include a great photo. Towards the top of the page, you're also going to want a 1-paragraph pitch for the book. You're also going to include buy buttons. You want a lot of buy buttons. A buy button for each format on Amazon, a buy button to buy from you direct if you sell direct, so things like special editions or signed copies, If you sell direct, this is where you'll do it. Or if you're selling direct through a service like Book Vault, which we'll link to, you want a button for that. If you accept bulk orders, this is where you put your bulk order buy button. And I will say, if you want to have just one buy button because you're trying to make it look pretty, you can use Genius Link, which we have a whole episode on that will then bring up a pop-up window where that then has all of the buy buttons. That's fine as well. After your kind of introduction section, that was what we just talked about, it's time for the details section. In this section, most authors skip. And they skip it because it's not particularly interesting for most humans, but it is critical for AIs. This is the page that's going to help the AI make sense of your book, not just on your own website, but on all of the websites on the web, which will help it clarify what your book is all about. So this is where you're going to include your paper book ISBN, your audiobook ASIN and ISBN, your ebook ASIN and ISBN, your publisher name and city and state, the publication year, the Library of Congress catalog and publication data if you have it. So if you have SIP data for your book, this is where you're going to put it. What country your book was printed in. You will include your BISAC categories, basically everything that's on the copyright page and everything that's in that metadata episode I keep talking about, which will link to the metadata episode. Yes, you want to put all of that metadata here on this page. By including all of those ISBN numbers, it'll help AI to cluster all of your different books and realize that they're different versions of the same book. It'll help you combine your AI points, which will help make your book more recommendable. So take a look at your copyright page, and if the information is important enough to include on your copyright page, it's important enough to include here in this detail section. Now, on some websites, this section is hidden where you kind of click a drop-down menu and it opens up. That's fine, because most people aren't interested in these details, but the people who are really care about them. And remember, the AIs and the bots really do care. The next section of your book page is what I call book info. Your goal with this section is to make this page richer than Amazon, because that's your primary competition. You want to outrank Amazon so readers come to your website first and then go to Amazon. And this will take some work because Amazon has reviews and you're not going to have reviews, at least not the same reviews that Amazon has. But you can include your full back cover copy, which is the first thing I would include here. So you have the one paragraph summary at the top, and then you have your full 3 or 4 or 5 paragraph back cover copy. If you're needing help with back cover copy, I have a Patreon Toolbox tool to help you create both the 3 paragraph back cover copy and the 1 paragraph pitch and the 1 sentence pitch. I have a bunch of different tools that approach it from different directions. I even have a brand new tool where you just upload your manuscript and it creates the back cover copy for you automatically. It reads your book and then it generates the back cover copy. You may already have this, just make sure that this is where you include it on your book page. The next section is endorsements. The more endorsements, the better. And this isn't where you have abbreviated endorsements. You might have an abbreviated version of the endorsement on your Amazon page, but here you want to have the full endorsement, or at least as much of the endorsement as you would like to share. Because remember, this is about feeding AI information about your book as much as it is about convincing readers to buy your book. This is also where you're going to include reviews. Now, don't copy and paste reviews from Amazon. That's against their terms of service, and it will look like plagiarism to Google. When I say reviews, I'm talking about linking to blogs that's reviewed your book or media outlets that have reviewed your book. You can have a short snippet and then perhaps a link that says read full review. The next thing I would include is sample chapters. So a PDF of sample chapters. I think 3 chapters is good, maybe 20, 30 pages. It's up to you how much of a sample chapter you can do. If you're traditionally published, you'll need to check with your publisher to see how much they're willing to let you share. AIs love sample chapters and readers love them too. And remember, there's already a sample chapter in the Kindle version. This is just making a PDF available to everyone. I'd also include the tropes that are in your book. And there's a lot of great examples of an image of your book cover that features all the different tropes kind of coming off as arrows. You can also include it as a bulleted list. And if you're struggling to figure out what the tropes are for your book, I have a Patreon Toolbox tool that will actually evaluate your manuscript and give you a list of tropes based off of what you wrote. And I plan to do a whole episode on tropes and how to use them in marketing soon. Another section I would include here is an FAQ section. So you probably are getting questions from readers if the book is already published, or there's questions that you suspect they're asking. This is where you would include their question and then your answer. And for the FAQ section, I recommend that you use the Yoast SEO FAQ block. This will optimize this section in the background for the bots, where they'll see what the question is, they'll see what the answer is, and this is magical for training AI. It also will train Google. It might surface your answer to this question if somebody types that question into Google. You can do this if you're using Yoast SEO, which I recommend regularly on this podcast. It's a free plugin for WordPress if you're using WordPress.org. All right, so now let's talk about the For Readers section. This is sometimes called the Supplementary Materials section. And this section is very different from the previous section. So up to this point, it's about convincing people to buy your book and giving them the information that they need to buy your book. This next section is for people who have already purchased your book to make them happy. This is the support after the sale you can think of. This section, most authors kind of scatter around their website and make it almost impossible to find. And where readers look for this is on the book page. You have one big, beautiful page for your book that has all of the information, both for future readers and existing readers. And this can be a big, long page. Remember, our goal is to beat Amazon. And this section is where you really will have an edge, because the content we're about to talk about is often content that you can't find on Amazon.com. Some suggestions of things you might consider putting here. Bonus chapters. If you have any bonus chapters for your book, either fiction or nonfiction, readers love bonus chapters. You can mention it in the letter at the end of your book that you have some extra chapters on some specific topics. A newsletter sign up. If somebody just finished your book or they're halfway through and they're enjoying it, they want to join your newsletter. So include a link for them to do just that. A lot of authors want to share the music that they listen to while writing your book, and this is where you would do that. Just go on Spotify, create a playlist for the music that you listen to, and if you already have a Spotify playlist, you've already done this part, so just copy the link to the playlist and link to it here in the section of your book page. And so now readers can listen to the soundtrack for the book if they want to. This is also where I would link to your reader community if you have one on Discord or Facebook or somewhere else. A lot of authors have a community where they hang out with their readers, and this is where you would link to it. This is also where you can include links to things like a quiz. So if you have a which character are you quiz, or a quiz to help with your nonfiction book, any reader magnets related to your book. So if you create, let's say you have a prequel and you're using it as a reader magnet, make sure to include a link on this page, because 5 years from now, you'll probably be using a different reader magnet, maybe a prequel for a different book. But readers who read this book and who want that prequel reader magnet still want it. And so make sure to include it here so it's always available. Some ideas specifically for fiction, you can include epilogues, deleted scenes, maps. Please, high resolution maps are a wonderful thing to include. I wouldn't put the high resolution map on the page. What I would do is I'd have a link to the high resolution map, just the JPEG. That way somebody on a phone can pinch and zoom, and somebody on a computer can scroll in and scroll out. I'd also include a character compendium PDF. So this is a list of all of your characters to help somebody keep them straight. And if you're needing help with this, I have a Patron Toolbox tool that will evaluate your manuscript, pull out the characters, and create a compendium, including audio voice profiles for the narrator. I would cut the instructions for the audiobook narrator from the version that you share with readers. But again, this one tool does both of those things. It gives you a place to start from. You'll want to tweak it, of course, but this does a shockingly good job describing your characters. You can also include a location compendium PDF, which I have a Patron Toolbox tool to help with that. If you're writing fantasy, maybe a faction or a race compendium, as a PDF, and I have a Patron Toolbox tool to help with that. Or a timeline. I think most books don't need a timeline document, but if your book is kind of weird in its timeline, or the story itself is told in a non-chronological order, having a timeline PDF on your book page could be really helpful for some readers. And I have a Patron Toolbox tool to help with this as well. This is also really helpful on a series page. So as you write more books, you may want to have a books page specifically for a series. And some of these features may be useful for a series. So if you've got a 7-book series, a character compendium or timeline becomes really helpful because it can get overwhelming if you have a lot of characters, especially characters. Some of them may have died and new characters are introduced. Having a compendium is really great for that. And many books can benefit from a glossary. You may have a glossary in your book already, and if you have it on your book, you don't need it on your book page. But if you forgot to include one on your book page, this is a great place to link to a glossary PDF. And you may be wondering if I have a Patron Toolbox tool to help create a glossary. And yes, I do. It will read your book, generate a glossary based off of how you were using those keywords, and then you can tweak it, make sure it's correct. And now you've got a glossary, very low effort. All right, so now let's say, what do you include for reader resources if you wrote a nonfiction? Well, you can include worksheets, checklists, any sort of templates for something that you were instructing in your book. If you publish a standalone workbook, you wouldn't want to put it here. But if you don't have a workbook for sale that's a companion for your nonfiction book, this is a wonderful feature to include, and you can use it potentially to build your email newsletter. Also, any kind of printables. There's a lot of options here for nonfiction. Hopefully I'm getting the gears turning. You won't want to include all these things, of course, but hopefully you're getting some ideas on some ways that you can really make this page better than the page on Amazon. If you have an audiobook version of your book, I would include PDFs for any of the visuals that accompany the book. So illustrations, charts, maps, photos. A lot of this stuff is often lost, as I read a lot of audiobooks, and these companion PDFs are often really hard to find. Sometimes they don't exist. And I love it when an author makes a PDF of the visuals as a companion for the book. Audible actually has a way to deliver this PDF now, but I would for sure include it on your website as well. The next section of this page is blog links. So if you've been blogging about your book, and you should have at least one blog post that tells the story of how the book came to be, you want to include links to those blog posts. But other things that authors may blog about, fan art, as readers send you art of your characters, questions that are answered. So this is more than what would be in the FAQ block. So some questions require a long, in-depth answer of clarification. And so if you had to write a whole, 5 or 6 paragraph email answering the question, that should be a blog post as well. Recipes. So if you have any recipes, both fiction and nonfiction, can benefit from recipes. Blog posts are a great way to share a recipe. Include a link to that recipe. Similar books post. So if you wrote a great fantasy adventure, dragon fighting, and you could write, other dragon fighting books related to my book title. That kind of post is really good for training AI. It's also good for readers. And don't just hide it on your blog, include a link to it here on your book page. Same with a similar author's post. So if your name is John Smith, you can say other authors similar to John Smith, or if you're writing similar to J.K. Rowling, you can say 7 authors to read if you love J.K. Rowling. So you include J.K. Rowling, 6 other authors, and then you'd put yourself on the list as well. Another blog post you could write is an audiobook narrator interview, where you interview your audiobook narrator and perhaps include a blooper reel. Some audiobook narrators are willing to share that. Now, if you're using Divi and WordPress, which is what I recommend in my free course on building author websites, you can make all of this automatic. And it's actually surprisingly simple. So first, you tag the blog posts. You just add a tag to the blog post about your book with a tag that's the title of that book. It's very simple. And then in Divi, you add to this page a Divi blog module. And in the blog module, you can check a checkbox saying only include blog posts with this tag. And if you do that, all past and future blog posts with that tag will be automatically added to this section of your book page. It's just that simple. So it's really easy to integrate your blog with your book page if you're using WordPress. If you're on Wix or Squarespace, good luck. Maybe there's a way to do it, but I haven't seen anyone pull it off. The next section of your book page is media mentions. The goal of this section is to make the book look more popular. It also serves as a resource for readers who want more info about your book. So this is where you would list podcast interviews with links to listen to those interviews, blog reviews or interviews. So an actual blog review you may want to include higher where I was talking about it, but you could also include it down here. YouTube interviews. So if any YouTube channel has interviewed you about your book, you'd link to watch it. Don't embed the video here necessarily. You can if you want to, but I think just a bulleted list of links is fine. It depends on how many interviews you're doing. So if you've only done one interview, maybe embed it. But if you're doing a bunch, just a bulleted list is sufficient. You can also include any traditional PR clippings, so link to newspaper articles or TV show interviews that you've done, and any press releases about the book. This is where you would link to them. If you're not doing a lot of PR, you may just have a single section called media mentions with a bulleted list. But if you're doing a lot of PR, you can have these sections broken out. And it really helps make your book look like something. And it also gives people in the future a great chance of getting a sense of what this book was like when it was buzzy, right? Because typically you get all the media about your book in the first few weeks after launch. And people who've discovered your book in the future may want to see what that buzz was all about. The next section of your book page is discussion group resources. So this is another kind of for the readers section. And the goal here is to give readers the idea of featuring your book for a book club, but also if they decide to use your book for a book club, to make it easier for them. So this is where I would include your discussion guide. And I have a patron toolbox tool that actually reads your book and generates discussion questions for you. It can read the whole book or just a single chapter. It's surprisingly good at this. I also would include a classroom lesson plan if your book is targeted at children or students of some kind. And I have a patron toolbox tool for this as well. And with this toolbox tool, you can actually select the age group that you're targeting, and it will create a lesson plan for that specific age group. So everywhere from kindergarten to college age, and it will have interactive activities for the students as well. It's a great tool. It's good to have a lesson plan if you want to make your book friendly to teachers or homeschool moms. Also consider creating a participant printable. So this is a one-page summary of your book to refresh people's memory, because not everyone who comes to the book club actually reads the book. So having a quick summary can help them not feel quite so left out. You can include this or not. Perhaps a sample PowerPoint for a teacher or for a group organizer. I would also include your bulk order link here again. So yes, you have your bulk order link if you allow for bulk orders up in the buy buttons, but I'd also include it down here just as a kind of a hint, hey, you can order my book in bulk for your book club. All right, so now let's talk briefly about search engine optimization. So if you're using Yoast SEO, which I've already talked about, you want to make the focus keyword of this page the book title. Just the book title, because that's what you're trying to rank for. If somebody types your title of your book into Google, you want to rank above every other book with that title and every other page about your book. So you want to outrank Barnes & Noble and Amazon and all the others. So for the meta title of your page, you want it to be book title by author name. Just really simple. And then for the meta description, you want to write a 140 character version of your book blurb. And again, if you have an FAQ, include that FAQ block like I talked about in the FAQ section. But in general, just try to turn the Yoast dots green. I have some episodes on SEO that we'll link to in the blog version of this episode. And Yoast also has a free course on search engine optimization on their website, which we'll link to in the blog version. So this may seem like a lot of work, but don't worry. This is all one-time work. So a lot of marketing work is constant work where you have to make like social media. If you're trying to do social media marketing, which I don't generally recommend, authors who are doing that, they have to keep feeding the beast. They have to keep feeding the algorithm. This isn't like that. Once it's done, it's done. And each time you build a page for one of your books, it's easier for the next book. And it will get a little bit easier every time. And don't forget, I have a free checklist to help you. And you can find that at authormedia.com/466. And one more encouragement, you don't need to add all of these elements. The more the better, but don't worry if you don't have a glossary. This page will still be good. Most authors just have the book, a paragraph, and one button to buy it on Amazon. You can definitely do better than that. And the more you add to it over time, the better this page gets. If you want help with your website, I have a free course called How to Make Author Websites Amazing. So like I said at the beginning of the episode, I started off in this industry building websites for authors, but I retired. I got tired of that. And so my way of exiting was to create kind of the ultimate course on how to build a website and how to make your existing website better. And it was my way of saying no to everyone who's asking me to build them a website. So now I say no, but here's a course on how you can do it yourself. And it's a lot cheaper to do it yourself than it was to hire me back in the day. And we'll have a link to that free course in the description of this episode. And you're also welcome to share your book page. If you upgraded your book page and you want some feedback on it, share a link in the comments. Not on YouTube. YouTube doesn't really like links, but I have a special community of over 2,000 helpful authors at www.authormedia.social. So you've often heard me talk about authormedia.social, but I don't know if I've explained, this is a website. It's a social network for authors who've been listening to the podcast for a long time. Right now, you can join for free. It may not be free forever, but everyone who gets in while it's free will stay in for free. And you can find that at www.authormedia.social. So just for clarification, authormedia.com is the website that's got all of our blogs and helpful articles and courses. And authormedia.social is the social network for authors. Two different websites. They link to each other. But there's been some confusion. I want to try to clear that up. Also, special thanks to our featured patron, Jane Daly, author of Where Is My Sister? When Brianna vanishes inside an elite self-help program that demands total obedience, her sister Morgan must unravel a dangerous web of secrets before it's too late. Find out in the Christian psychological thriller, Where Is My Sister? By Jane Daly. Thank you, Jane, for being a patron. Thank you for your support that helps keep this podcast on the air. And as a way of saying thank you, featured patrons like you get access to my patron toolbox, which has all of the toolbox tools, many of which I talked about in this episode, but there's a bunch more. And patrons also get a live Q&A session once a month where they can ask me questions. And I also have exclusive discounts. So you can get 50% off the free course on websites, or you can get 50% off many of my other courses as well. The Novel Marketing Podcast is a production of authormedia.com. You can find the blog version and the printable checklist at authormedia.com/466. You can find the place to leave comments if you want to share your book page. You can find that at authormedia.social. Just go to the Novel Marketing section and we'll have a post for this episode. If you found this free episode helpful, if you'd be willing to share it with a friend, I would really appreciate it. That helps out the show quite a bit. And a thank you to everyone who's been sharing this show on Reddit. I've been noticing people mentioning this in the comments on Reddit. I appreciate that. I'm Thomas Umstattd Jr. saying thank you for listening and live long and prosper.